Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into an article from Shasta Unfiltered that really gets into California's big push for a zero-emission future. It's stirring up a huge debate about whether the state's power grid can handle it and, what this all means for consumer costs. Right off the bat, the article hits you with this really stark warning. It basically frames this whole thing as a high-stakes clash between a major environmental policy and what it calls the real-world consequences for the people living in California. So to unpack all this, we're going to walk through the article's main points. First, we'll look at the specific rules that are pushing this all-electric future. Then we'll get into the legal fights that are popping up. After that, we'll see what they say about the pressure on the power grid, the rising cost to you, and finally, what the report claims are some overlooked alternatives. Okay, let's dive right in. The whole foundation of the article's argument is built on these specific state and local rules. Regulations that are all designed to phase out fossil fuels, not just in cars, but in our homes too. And when you see the timeline the report lays out, it's pretty aggressive. You can see how all these different rules from different places are all set to come together over the next decade. It's a really rapid, top-to-bottom shift to all-electric tech. Now, what's really interesting here is how it breaks down all the different layers of government that are involved. The article points out that it's not just one thing. You've got state building codes, you've got powerful agencies like CARB, that's the California Air Resources Board, and then even regional groups like the Bay Area Air District, all pushing in the same direction. And all of this leads to the next big point. According to the article, these state and local rules are on a direct collision course with federal law, and that, of course, is sparking some major legal fights. So this is the heart of the legal conflict the article presents. It really boils down to one huge question. Can a state use its own rules to basically ban an appliance that the federal government says meets all the national energy standards? That's the core of the debate. And this really shows the legal precedent the article is pointing to. It lays out this pattern, It starts with a big court ruling against Berkeley's gas ban. Then that seems to affect what other regulators do. And eventually, it even triggers lawsuits from the federal government itself. So the legal battle is one piece of the puzzle. But the other, according to this report, is a much more practical one. Is California's power grid actually ready for the huge jump in demand that an all-electric future is going to bring? To try and put a number on that challenge, the article pulls this figure from a 2023 study. It projects a potential electricity shortfall of over 21% by 2045. And get this, that's just from the EV mandate alone. That's not even counting all the new electric appliances. And it's not just the electric vehicles. The report lists all these other critical factors. It argues that the state's infrastructure is already aging, there are permitting delays for new projects, you've got climate risks like wildfires and new demand from things like data centers. All of it is already pushing the system to its limit. Okay, now let's get to what the article says is the most direct consequence for everybody living there, the rising cost of just keeping the lights on. And the numbers the article presents here are pretty stark. Based on its data, California's projected average rate for 2026 is 34 cents per kilowatt hour. That's nearly double the projected national average. And to connect those numbers to the real human impact, the article includes quotes like this one from a San Jose resident. It's meant to capture what it calls a growing frustration among people who are seeing their utility bills just keep going up and up. So with all these challenges, legal, infrastructural, financial, the article then asks, well, what else is there? It argues that some really practical, lower emission alternatives are being completely ignored in what it calls an all-or-nothing approach. The main alternative that the report really champions is something called renewable natural gas, or RNG. It's presented as this cost-effective way to cut emissions by using the gas pipelines and appliances we already have instead of having to do a complete and very expensive overhaul of the entire system. The article also points to these other technologies, things like super-efficient gas appliances and hybrid cars. It makes the case that these are sensible bridge solutions that could lower emissions right now, but that they're being pushed aside by these aggressive mandates. So in the end, the author of the Shasta Unfiltered piece, they don't pull any punches. The article wraps up with a clear call to action, arguing that more lawsuits and federal intervention are needed to stop what it describes as just burdensome and unrealistic government overreach. And really, all the arguments presented in this article frame this huge, ongoing debate. It leaves us with this really critical question about how we move forward. How do we find the right balance between these incredibly ambitious goals and the immediate practical realities of grid reliability and what people can actually afford?